As she struggled to breathe, Kimberly felt a presence approach. Turning her head with great effort, she saw a figure emerge from the mist, a woman, tall and elegant, with skin as pale as moonlight and eyes that glowed like molten gold. Her hair was a cascade of raven black, flowing down her back like a river of night. This was no ordinary woman. Kimberly knew it instinctively. This was a vampiress, a creature of myth and nightmare. "You are fading," the vampiress murmured, her voice a silken caress that wrapped around Kimberly's fevered mind. "But there is still time." Kimberly managed a weak chuckle, or perhaps it was a sob. Time for what? To die more gracefully? The vampiress knelt beside her, her movements fluid and graceful. "No, my dear, time to live, or to become something more." Before Kimberly could respond, another presence cut through the air. A growl, low and menacing, echoed off the ancient stones. From the opposite end of the street, a massive shape emerged, a beast, part wolf, part man, with fur matted and eyes that burned with a savage light. A lycanthrope, primal and ferocious. "Ah, our other guest has arrived," the vampiress said, her tone conversational, as if discussing the weather. Kimberly tried to speak, but her throat was dry, her voice nothing more than a rasp. The lycanthrope prowled closer, its muscles twitching with barely contained aggression. "Leave her," the beast growled, his voice deep and guttural. "She's mine." The vampiress stood, her form straightening to its full height. "I think not. She interests me. Perhaps she will join my coven." The lycanthrope bared its teeth, a snarl ripping from its chest. "Over my dead body." Kimberly watched, her mind struggling to process the bizarre scene unfolding before her. Was this real, or just another fragment of her dying hallucination? The vampiress turned to her, her eyes piercing. "Choose, Kimberly. Embrace the night, or embrace the wild. Become eternal, or become primal." As the two creatures circled each other, Kimberly felt a strange energy surge through her, momentarily pushing back the pain of her mortal wound. She rose unsteadily to her feet, her vision blurring and clearing as she swayed between them. I don't understand," she stammered, her voice stronger now, infused with a strange vitality. The vampiress smiled, a predatory curve of her lips. "It's quite simple, my dear. Surrender to me, and you shall know the power of the undead. Join with the beast, and you shall feel the raw strength of the werewolf." The lycanthrope roared, the sound shattering the silence of the ghostly city. "Enough talk. Let her decide in battle." With a speed that defied belief, the lycanthrope launched itself at the vampiress, its claws extended, jaws snapping. The vampiress dodged with a grace that belied her supernatural nature, her hands transforming into razor-sharp claws of her own. Kimberly stumbled back, her heart pounding in her chest as she watched the duel unfold. The air crackled with energy, the sounds of their combat echoing off the stone walls. Each strike was met with a counter, each dodge followed by a retaliatory attack. As they fought, Kimberly felt a strange pull, a temptation to step into the fray herself. The vampiress caught her eye, her golden gaze intense. "Join me, Kimberly. Feel the power of the night." The lycanthrope howled, a challenge and a call. "Or join with me. Feel the power of the wild." Kimberly's mind raced, her body trembling with the influx of unnatural energies coursing through her. She looked from one to the other, her decision hanging in the balance. I can't," she gasped, her voice torn between fear and fascination. The vampiress and the lycanthrope continued their dance of death, each move more intricate, more deadly than the last. Kimberly watched, her resolve weakening with each passing moment. "Choose," the vampiress demanded, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Choose," the lycanthrope echoed, its voice a thunderous command. Kimberly closed her eyes, her breathing ragged. When she opened them again, she saw the vampiress closing in on the lycanthrope, her claws poised to strike. "Now, Kimberly," the vampiress urged, her voice a siren's call. Kimberly took a faltering step forward, her hand outstretched. The lycanthrope turned, its eyes locking with hers, a plea in its savage gaze. "Help me," it begged, its voice raw with desperation. Kimberly's heart pounded, her mind a whirlwind of conflicting desires. She took another step, her hand trembling as she reached out. She began, her voice a whisper lost in the din of their battle. The vampiress lunged, her claws slicing through the air towards the lycanthrope's throat. Kimberly screamed, her voice merging with the howl of the beast as she made her choice. Kimberly's hand shot forward, her fingers brushing against the vampiress's outstretched arm. The moment their skin touched, a surge of energy coursed through Kimberly, electrifying her veins and momentarily numbing the pain that had been consuming her. The world around them seemed to freeze, the sounds of the lycanthrope's growls and the vampiress's battle cries fading into the background. The vampiress turned her head slowly, her golden eyes locking onto Kimberly's with an intensity that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. "Embrace it," she whispered, her voice a seductive murmur that resonated deep within Kimberly's bones. "Embrace the night." Kimberly felt her body moving on its own accord, drawn towards the vampiress like a moth to a flame. The lycanthrope, sensing the shift in momentum, lunged forward, its massive form colliding with the ground mere inches from where Kimberly stood. Its snarls filled the air, but Kimberly's focus was solely on the vampiress, on the dark promise that seemed to emanate from her very being. "Yes," Kimberly breathed, her voice barely above a whisper as she stepped closer to the vampiress. "I choose you." The vampiress smiled, a wicked curve of her lips that sent a shiver down Kimberly's spine. "Then let us begin," she said, her tone shifting from seductive to commanding. With a swift motion, she extended her claw-tipped hand and sliced it across Kimberly's neck. Kimberly gasped as pain flared across her skin, followed by a rush of warmth that trickled down her throat. She could feel the blood, her blood, pooling at the edge of her wound, and before she could react, the vampiress leaned in, her lips pressing against Kimberly's flesh. The sensation was unlike anything Kimberly had ever experienced. It was both painful and pleasurable, a mix of agony and ecstasy that flooded her senses. She could feel the vampiress's tongue lapping at her wound, drawing out the life force that was rapidly ebbing away. And yet, instead of weakening her, Kimberly felt stronger, more alive than she had in years. As the vampiress drank, Kimberly's vision blurred and then sharpened, taking on a new clarity. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds more acute. She could hear the lycanthrope's heavy breathing, the distant echo of the city's crumbling stones, even the faint rustle of leaves in a wind she couldn't feel. When the vampiress finally pulled away, her lips stained red with Kimberly's blood, Kimberly swayed on her feet, her legs trembling with the force of what had just transpired. But her mind was clear, her thoughts focused. She looked at the vampiress, at the power that now coursed through her veins, and knew that she had made the right choice. "What happens now?" Kimberly asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. The vampiress chuckled, a low, throaty sound that sent a shiver down Kimberly's spine. "Now, my dear, you are one of us. You are bound to the night, to me, forever." Kimberly nodded, her gaze shifting to the lycanthrope, which lay defeated on the ground, its eyes burning with a mixture of rage and resignation. "And him?" she asked, her voice tinged with a hint of regret. Kimberly Russell coughed violently, each spasm sending a fresh wave of agony through her body. She was dying, that much was clear. The world around her had dissolved into a surreal landscape of twisted shadows and eerie light, a canvas painted by the delirium of her impending demise. In this hallucinatory state, she found herself in an ancient, crumbling city, its streets lined with statues that seemed to watch her with hollow eyes. The vampiress glanced at the beast, her expression cold. He is no longer your concern. You have chosen the path of the vampire, the eternal night. Let him return to his wilderness, or not. It matters not to us. Kimberly hesitated, her heart torn between the newfound power coursing through her and the lingering empathy for the creature she had once considered saving. But as the vampiress took her hand and led her away, Kimberly knew that there was no turning back. She had embraced the night, and with it, a new chapter of her existence had begun. The streets of the ancient city seemed to come alive around them, the shadows lengthening as they walked, the air growing colder. Kimberly could feel the vampiress's presence beside her, a constant source of strength and guidance. She wondered what awaited her in this new world, what challenges and pleasures she would discover. As they rounded a corner, the vampiress stopped, her golden eyes scanning the horizon. "Look," she murmured, pointing towards a towering structure that loomed over the cityscape. "That is our destination, a place of power, of secrets untold." Kimberly followed her gaze, her eyes widening as she took in the grandeur of the building. It was majestic yet menacing, its stone walls weathered by time yet still standing strong. She could sense the energy pulsing from it, a beacon calling to her newfound instincts. "What is it?" Kimberly asked, her voice laced with curiosity and awe. The vampiress smiled, her fangs glinting in the moonlight. "A sanctuary, a fortress, a place where we can train you, teach you the ways of the night." Kimberly nodded, her resolve strengthening with each step they took towards their destination. The lycanthrope was forgotten, left behind in the dust of her transformation. She was a vampire now, bound to the night, and nothing would ever be the same again. As they approached the towering structure, Kimberly felt a surge of anticipation. This was just the beginning, she knew, of a journey that would take her to the darkest corners of the world and beyond, and she was ready, eager even, to embrace every moment of it.